Good evening, Benish Unified. My name is Stephanie Rice, and I am Director of Education Services. And I have the pleasure this evening to introduce Julie Paymer and Janine Wakefield. They're here from Tina Steam. And Tina Steen has been working with Bay Area or East Bay Area schools for 29 years. So it's my pleasure to say welcome and thank you as a district employee and a parent of a teen myself. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. As Stephanie said, my name is Julie, and tonight we are going to be talking about kids and their screens. We're going to be talking about internet, cell phones, and social media. So first of all, I want to know, we kind of timed this in December intentionally. Is there anybody here who is planning to get one of their kids a cell phone for Christmas? No? No, no. Well,
now you're really not going.
Yeah, you're definitely not gonna. True. Yeah, you don't want them to find out. Well, if you are definitely in the right place. So as Stephanie said, I'm with Tina Steam, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are, just so you have an idea of where we're coming from. So for 29 years, we've been working with schools in the East Bay, and we go into schools and talk to kids about all the challenges that they're facing. That might be bullying, peer pressure, vaping, substance abuse, and definitely mental health. It's a very interactive presentation, so we really learn a lot from the students, and we want to share that with parents. And we not only work closely with the students, but we also work really closely with teachers and counselors and administrators. And then all our research and speaking to 20,000 students a year, we really learn a lot, and we want to share that with parents because parenting is really hard. So we're so glad you're here tonight. This is my family. We went to New York. It was a hard time to getting a picture from this decade because my kids are a little bit older, but that's my husband, John. My son, Bryce, is 23. He's up in Sacramento. And my daughter, Allison, is 19, and she's going to DVC. Now, tonight with me is my good friend and parent education speaker, Janine. Janine, you want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Janine, and this is my family. I have a son, Chandler, who's 26, who just got married in May. And then my daughter on the far left is Lexi, and she's actually one of our Tina Steam speakers. Mm-hmm. So, and my husband, Brent. So they're 26 and 24. So I kind of got into the, when the iPhones were coming out, they were about in junior high. So I've kind of been through it all as well. Yes. And also, my dog Levi, he has his own Instagram account. So this is Levi. He's got one eye. And he doesn't have a lot of followers, so I don't think he has too much FOMO, but I don't have to monitor him too much because he doesn't really have a phone. So, but anyway, that's kind of, shows you a lot of people have social media accounts. So tonight we're going to be talking about smartphones and social media and the effects it has on kids. So it's good to have these conversations before your kids have phones. However, we know we don't live in a perfect world. So if your kids already have phones, you're in the right place. It's never too late. We need to be aware of the dangers and potential problems that can come with our kids regarding social media, apps, and cell phones. So we're going to talk about the effects of the usage. And then at the end, we're going to give you some tips to help you navigate it. And we don't want you to freak out. We just want you to just learn kind of what we've learned. And then we're going to give you information because that's power, right? So don't run out before the good part. Does that sound good to y'all? Okay, perfect. All right. So our kids. Our kids are what we call digital natives, this generation of the younger children. So these children, most of them have not known life before social media. And if they did, they were very young. So they pretty much kind of remember growing up with smartphones. My kids didn't really have them, but they did have iPods and PlayStation and all that kind of stuff. So, but they are really the first generation that can be active and available almost 24 hours a day because their phones are there and we have technology. So these digital platforms are pretty much woven into their lives. And so they tend to be particularly impatient because they're used to technology just being there and bringing them, fulfilling their desires from an early age. So speaking of that, we kind of have a funny Comcast video that shows you what we're talking about.
Hi, could I have a medium latte, please?
Sure.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
where's my latte?
Although she is not a teenager, you get the point, right? We're just used to, oh shoot, I forgot to mobile order it and I got there. Where is it? All the DoorDash orders have gone in front of mine. But anyway, so speaking of, I'm sure y'all remember Kmart. Do you remember the store Kmart? Okay, so my kids remember Kmart because it was around, but has anyone ever heard of the word layaway? Are you too young to know what layaway is? You know what layaway is? Okay, so I remember when I was a kid, I'm like, oh, I want this bike. Your mom could go and put $20 down and the store would hold it for you, and you kind of pay slowly, and when it's paid off you get your bike, right? So our parents were used to, we had to wait for things. Well, the kids today, they're getting things right away. So these kids, they pretty much were the first generation to raise these kids, right? So we're kind of like new at all this. So like I said, my kids were 9 and 11 when the iPhone came out, so they didn't really have them. We waited till high school, so they were, I think, in 6th and 8th or something like that. But this is the phone we got them, this lovely flip phone. So that was they thought we were the worst parents ever because this is we got them these phones, and we're like, well, if you need us to pick you up from sports, you call us, right? I don't even think there was like texting capability, and if there was, they had to push the 8 times to get the word hi out. So anyway, but in reality, our kids and even our teens, they really don't have the capability to manage these screens. I mean, sure, we can hand them the phone and say, hey, can you fix this for me? Because they're real, tech savvy. But as far as having the capability and the brain capacity, it's not like you would hand your kid, your 16-year-old, your keys to the Ferrari, right? And say, drive safe, be good, because we just wouldn't do that, right? So just as parents, we decide, is my kid old enough? Is my kid mature enough to drive? And we teach them how to drive safely. That's what we want to do, right? We want to help them manage their devices safely and just be good with their time. So, so we just wanted to ask you, do you think social media is good, or do you think it's bad, or do you think it's so-so? Like, what are your thoughts on that? In general. Okay, bad. Okay. Anyone else have another thought? Right. Bad. Okay. So, yeah. Right. So you talk to kids every day. What are the kids in the classes saying?
Most of them, they tell us, well, it's good, it's bad. So they recognize the negative aspects.
Right.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay, so as parents, what do you use social media for? Or are you on social media? Not really. Okay. Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Right. It's great to stay in contact with relatives. You can do research on it, right? You Google something, and sometimes you get Wikipedia. You can go on YouTube and do how-to videos, right? My oil got changed the other day, and my light was on, and YouTube, I had to watch a video, and 25 steps later, I finally got the thing to turn off. I'm a real estate agent, so I use it to promote my business. So I'm constantly, trying to post on Instagram and Facebook, different, either my listings or different market stats and things like that. So, and also we can use it for online shopping, right? I mean, we've got Amazon, you've got DoorDash, you can look up a restaurant, hours, reservations, all that good stuff. So, when Facebook came out, it was all, they wanted it, there was a lot of really good things, right? There was relatives that found each other. There was organ donors connected. Julie and I personally know someone who their son got an organ transplant through a Facebook. This family on the East Coast knew that their child needed a liver and whatnot. So it could be really good. So does the word 411 sound familiar to you? Remember what 411 was? Information.
We don't
Remember?
have to do that anymore.
Right. We used to call. I remember one time I actually got a local person, and she told me the restaurant I wanted the number for was good. I'm like, wow, you're not like in New York or India or something. So, we had to call 411. Then we had to call the restaurant to ask them their hours. Well, now, this information stage, our kids, they can look on there oh, Taco Bell, they're open till midnight. I have 20 minutes to get through the drive-through, or I can call DoorDash and it will be to my house in a half an hour, right? So it's not all bad, but there are some great things about it. But we just want to, know what are our kids using social media for? So there was a study from Forbes that talked about what teens use social media for. So 97% used it for shopping inspiration, 65% used it for entertaining content, and 60% use it for current events.
I love that because both of my kids actually use social media for their news, to get all of their news, mostly YouTube. And it's really interesting because the popular influencers are really funny. They're hilarious, but they definitely have their own spin. And so it's a great conversation starter. Just ask your kids, where do you get your news? And who are you following? And try not to, sometimes you might freak out a little bit when you hear what some of these people are saying, but it's a great conversation starter. And I made the mistake, but thankfully I was able to recover. We want to make sure that we're not too judgy, because we're trying to get them to let us into their world, and we don't want them to put the wall right back up. So I just encourage fact checking when my son shares his favorite influencers with me. One thing about the media, if your kids have, how many have cell phones? How many of your kids have smartphones? Okay. If your kids have a smartphone and they have access to the internet, when something really bad happens in the media, if there's a shooting or something really upsetting, it's very likely that your kids have heard about it. So we might hope that they haven't, but really you need to find out. You need to subtly ask them so you can find out, because that's something that we want to process with them. One of the especially negative aspects is, unlike the news, the graphic content on social media often is not censored. So it's just something we want to be aware of. We want to know what our kids are being exposed to, and we want to be able to walk through it with them and help them to process it. We actually have some really good information on our website that shows age-appropriate ways to have conversations like that with your kids. It's very helpful. I highly suggest that. And as Janine said, the reason we're talking about the good side of social media, we don't want to scare anybody. We're not here to say social media is all terrible. It's here to stay, and there are some good things about it, but we definitely want parents to be fully aware of some of the negative things. So we cannot talk about social media without talking about mental health. We were in a 9th grade health ed class probably a month and a half ago, and we asked students, what do you think is contributing to the mental health crisis for young people? Every single student that responded said social media, that social media was a contributing factor. The Surgeon General, the US Surgeon General, said that when he hears from teens, the 3 main things he hears them talk about regarding social media: number 1, it makes them feel worse about themselves. Number 2, it makes them feel worse about their friendships. And number 3, they can't get off it. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. The suicide rate among US middle school students doubled from 2007 to 2014. Does anybody know what happened in 2007? That is the year that, yes, Apple launched the iPhone, the Android was released, Facebook and Twitter went global, and Google introduced YouTube. It has literally been called the year that we reinvented everything. Girls have been especially hard hit with social media. Up until about 2009, the number of girls who were admitted to the hospital for non-fatal self-harm remained fairly stable. In 2009, it skyrocketed. Look at these numbers. Does anybody know what happened in 2009? Social media for everybody. Social media on our smartphones. And just widely available, becoming widely available and widely accepted. Compared to 2001 to 2009, that time frame, US suicide rates are up 70% in girls aged 15 to 19, and 151% in girls aged 10 to 14. I hate talking about this, but we have to be real. We have to be aware of this. Social media has been, as I said, especially hard on our girls with all the filters and the unrealistic beauty expectations, especially our young girls. One more, the University of Michigan, one of their studies showed that after rising since the early 1990s, adolescent self-esteem, life satisfaction, and happiness plunged in 2012. And in 2012, that's when smartphone ownership was at 50%, and it's, of course, climbed steadily ever since then. That same study also found that adolescents' psychological well-being decreased the more hours per week they spent on screens, including, and they're talking about internet, social media, texting, gaming, and video chats. I'm definitely not trying to simplify mental health, and I'm not trying to simplify suicide. There's a lot of things that go into it, but when you look at the stats, the timelines, the studies, there's study after study after study. There is no denying that this has a significant impact on our students. Janine, do you want to talk a little bit about cyberbullying?
Yeah, sure. So, cyberbullying and trolls on social media. So that's another thing that's really affecting the mental health. So nearly half of the U.S. teens have said that they've experienced some form of cyberbullying. So there's 32% have been called an offensive name, 22% have had false rumors spread about them, and 17% have received explicit images that they didn't ask for. So that's pretty alarming. And what's happening now is that social media has created a normalization and a desensitization, right? So especially with regards to racist or sexually offensive comments. And it's easy not to think twice when everybody else is doing it and you're behind a screen not saying it to someone's face. So, trolling remarks are pretty normal in our society. And I really feel like some adults can be terrible examples. I turned off my Nextdoor because I just couldn't stand it. I mean, I just couldn't believe the pettiness of adults just attacking one another on there.
And when that first came out, I thought it was going to be a lot nicer because they're neighbors.
Right.
I didn't think they would do that.
I know. And Nextdoor kind of says like what area you're in. But I remember over COVID listening to someone complaining that there was kids playing out in the park. And I was like, well, they're playing out in the park, It was just crazy. But anyway, and then another concern we have is interacting with strangers. And I think somebody over here, you mentioned the chat rooms, right? Private chat rooms and things that, or somebody said something about chat rooms. Maybe it wasn't you. Sorry. You're looking at me like, what? But teens, they're interacting with people that they don't know, whether it's video games, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. And Instagram, the profiles are a lot. I mean, there's a tiny little picture, at least on Facebook, like you can kind of like see whether or not they said like where they're from. But some of these other ones, there's people requesting you and they've got like a name that, John loves dogs or whatever. And you don't know, is this John Smith, the neighbor down the street, or is this some guy in New York? So there's people that will do weird friend requests or write weird messages. I get some from Army colonels from the East Coast looking for friendship and the same exact, boilerplate. You're like, okay, what is this? But anyway, and then something we're also seeing a lot of is they send these random text messages that sound like it's wrong number, who dis, or whatever that's called, when they're really just fishing for a comment. So I actually had it happen where I got a text about a cake order and, I'm picking it up at 3:00 and here I am innocently writing back, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, this is the wrong number, and thinking this poor grandma was missing out on her mom's birthday cake. Come to find out 3 or 4 texts later, this guy's inviting me to come to LA to hang out with him. And I was like, okay, sorry, delete, block the number. But I think you have a funny story too about that, right?
I do. I've definitely has anybody else had that happen? The random text thing? It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. They know what they're doing. They know how to trick you. When I first started at Teen Esteem, I've been with Teen Esteem for 11 and a half years. I'm actually on staff. And I had to write an article on Instagram. So I thought, well, I want to see the real experience that kids have on Instagram. So I set up an account and I called myself Bieber fan. I'm not, but yes. And I took for my profile picture, it was my dog. And then I just typed, I love my dog. I set my phone down. I kind of forgot about it. Within an hour, somebody was contacting me trying to get me to send pictures of myself. And they know how to do it. They made it sound like it was a contest, and whoever sends me the most awesome pictures, I'll share it with all my 3 million followers or something like that. So they know what they're doing. They know how to trick people. That's the scary part. So one of the things that aren't a lot of fun to talk about, but we have to along those lines, pornography and sending nudes. So pornography, depending on the study you look at, the average age kids are exposed to it are between 8 and 12. I hear people say, you know what, I looked at porn when I was a kid. My brother looked at porn when he was a kid. It is not a big deal. They're just curious. It's like a rite of passage. Please understand it is considerably different than what it was in the past. They do not have to go looking for it. It comes looking for them. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they're looking for customers for life. And our kids are easy targets. They're curious, they're hormonal, and if we give it to them, they have a cell phone, they have access to it 24/7. So when they see a photo that they like, that gives them a surge of dopamine, and then photo after photo after photo, their brain builds up a tolerance, and they need more and more. It's a legitimate addiction. And we hear about it regularly. And when we were young, keep in mind, we did not have an infinite number of photos in the palm of our hand that we could access anytime we wanted, unlimited. Now, middle school and high school teachers literally want us to talk about pornography when we're in the classroom, because they're seeing they're seeing kids that can't set it down, and they're seeing the desensitization that's happening. They're seeing how kids behave and how they're talking and behaving towards one another. It shocks me every time I see a middle school or high school student comment on our evaluation after a presentation about how glad they are that we covered pornography. And one student just the other day actually said, "I'm so glad you talked about porn because it has become a nightmare for me." So regarding this, as parents, we have to have open communication. We have to make sure our kids know, first of all, let me know if you see anything weird. Let me know if you see anything that's disturbing or upsetting. If you keep saying, you might have to repeat it, because if they're younger kids, you don't want to say, let me know if you see any naked people on your phone. But if you keep saying it, they will pick up on it. It happened with my son. So he understood what I meant. One of the many reasons we need to be really open about this, first of all, because of the addiction, there are resources, and we have that on the slide, that we point kids towards. We don't shame them, because we know how easy it is to fall into this. We just warn them against it and let them know if they are struggling, there are resources available. One of the many reasons we have to talk about things like this and keep that communication open with our kids is because of catfishing. And this has become a serious problem on a couple of different levels. We were at a school just this fall, a couple months ago, and we were talking about the potential downsides of sending nudes, the potential risks of sending nudes. Obviously, they often get shared. We have to talk about that with students, because it often starts in about 7th grade. After class, one of the kids came up to us and told us that we eventually found out there were a group of boys that were catfishing, pretending they were a young lady, sending nude photos, getting the boys to send them a nude photo, and then what do you think they did with the photos? They sent them all over the school. So it's horrible, but at least we were able to find out and take it to the administrator, and they were able to put a stop to it. But worse yet, there are extortionists that will do the exact same thing. And they'll hack into the kid's phone. There's a gentleman from Michigan, a father, who's trying to raise awareness because he lost his son. Someone hacked into his phone, they catfished him, got a nude photo, hacked into his phone, showed him, I have access to all of your contacts. If you don't send me $10,000, I'm going to share this photo with all of your contacts. Well, who's in the contacts? Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, and the young man took his life. So this is not something we want our kids to ever go through alone. We want to, obviously, we hope that they never do it at all, and we have to have those conversations, but we need to make sure that we're a safe place for them, and that if anything like that does happen, we have to recognize that there are people who are really good at tricking people. If you've ever been catfished, I mean, I used to literally teach a class to seniors on catfishing, and I got catfished. It's really easy. They know what they're doing. I mean, I gave out my password. I told them my dog's name, my mother's maiden name. I told them everything. And then about an hour later, I thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. So if it's going to happen to adults, we know it's going to happen with kids. They're going to be able to trick our kids. The other thing we need to talk about, I think, does anybody know a kid that's addicted to their screen? Does anybody know a kid that's not addicted to their screen? Right? So big tech, I'm telling you, they are in it for the money. We have one of our advisors works for the teen safety division of an app that probably we all have on our phone. He asked me not to say it, but he only lets his kids have their phone 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes at night. And he doesn't even like that, but he's settled on that. And he's a lot nicer than a lot easier than a lot of the big tech executives that we read about. Many of them don't let their kids have a phone at all, and certainly not social media. So just like with porn, it's addicting. Every like we get, every heart, every new follower. And what's worse, we're seeing kids, adults do it too, but kids especially, they're thinking that has something to do with their value and their worth, how many likes they get, how many followers they have. As I said, they're in it for the money, and they want people on their app as often as possible and as long as possible. So this is intentional. This is intentional. We just recently watched Social Dilemma just the other day. We rewatched it. It's a movie that came out a couple years ago, still very, very relevant. And they said there's entire teams of engineers trying to use your psychology against you. They track what you look at and how long you look at it. They measure what kinds of videos you like and what types of emotions trigger you, what gets you to stay on, what gets you to click out. And they work really hard to get us to do what they want. There's a lot of money involved. So again, it's a legitimate addiction. I'm kind of preaching to the choir. What does that look like for anybody whose kids do not have phones yet? What happens when you take the phone away from a kid it's just through the roof. They're willing to destroy relationships, to basically do anything to get another hit, just like if they were vaping. One of the things we talk about with kids in school when we're in classroom is when you come home from a bad day, we get them to acknowledge social media, what's their objective, and they realize they just want to make money. And then we talk about, well, what about this other group? What about our parents, our teachers, our coaches? What do they want? And the kids acknowledge that they want what's best for us. They love us. They care for us. They want us to succeed. Then we say, well, you come home from a bad day, and what's the first thing that you do? Do you go talk to those people that care about you and want you to succeed? Or do you go curl up with your cell phone? And how many of us do the same thing? I'll come home from a bad day, and I'm the first one to go, oh, maybe this will make me feel better.
Happy videos.
Yes, you know what? For real. Yeah, actually, those do make me feel better. So it's just so isolating. One other negative thing that I want to draw to your attention, a lot of influencers are advocating for and using drugs on social media, and our kids are watching these guys. Our kids are watching these people. We have a student speaker who conquered his drug addiction. He was addicted to Xanax and several other things for a few years. He went to rehab, and he's been able to conquer it. And he told us every single drug deal was through Snapchat. Are you guys familiar with Snapchat? Yeah. What do you think might be another reason why parents might not want Snapchat for their kids? Do you know? know about it?
Do you know have you ever been in Snapchat? So it's kind of made to send pictures to each other. So if you ever see your kids doing this and on the phone, they're probably sending Snapchat photos. As soon as you open that photo, it disappears. So they can text through it, right? So if you're going to go through their screen and cross check their text, you're not going to see what happens in Snapchat. You can call people on it. And the other thing about it too is that it doesn't show up in your phone log. So if you're ever like trying to figure out if your kid's like on the phone at night, if they're calling through their apps, that's not going to show up. You won't know that they had a 50-minute call from 1 to 2, a.m. or whatnot. So
Yeah.
that's the thing with Snapchat. Yeah. And there's a news feed on Snapchat kind of on the first page. And it does have a lot of, I think our other speaker, Wendy, showed like it's 2 clicks away from just kind of some dark stuff. It's sort of like that whole algorithm too. So it's like if you watch something on Snapchat of, kids doing drugs, that whole feed is going to be on there. So there's like this feed of like, whatever videos that may interest you. And then there's I'm going to send John a picture of whatever. And I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
That actually used to be the main thing that was so startling with Snapchat. You can send a picture and then it disappears. Well, kids have figured out that all you have to do is take a screenshot. So that picture never goes away.
And it tells you you've taken a screenshot.
Now it
but-
tells you. Yeah. It did not used to. So things are getting better. By now you might be thinking, what do I have to do to get off the grid for myself? I absolutely get it. I mean, it's like, can I live somewhere in the Sierras and just take my family and go hide? But we hate even camping, much less living off the land. So that's definitely not going to happen for us. But Janine, now we've talked about a lot of kind of bummer things to do with phones and social media. Can you help us? What are some things we can do as parents?
Okay, so let's lighten it up. First of all, this is a friend of ours, daughter really, really, really wanted Snapchat. So she thought she was going to convince her parents by putting these signs all over.
She did not.
So anyway, if it hasn't happened, coming soon to a home near you. But in reality, so how can we help our kids navigate the digital world safely? So first of all, if your kids don't have a phone yet, don't be in a hurry. You can find allies too, find other like-minded parents. Get your PTA to promote. There's something called waittilleighth.org, and that is just an organization discussion group where they're trying to get parents to wait till their kids are in 8th grade to get them a phone. If you have to get them a phone, you can get them one of these. I showed out this little flip phone. Some of you may have missed it, but Julie Googled this, and you can still get this through Walmart on Cricket Wireless. So
Quite inexpensive.
you can get them a phone to call people if they need to be safe. And then just try to make your house the hangout, right? If kids are at your house, give them some food. That always helps. Know your kids' friends. Know your kids, who your kids' friends' parents are, and just have people that kind of can be on the same page as you. So that's one idea. And if they do have a smartphone and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I need to dial back, then have a conversation with them and just say, hey, look, you can blame it on Julie and I and say, hey, we went to this talk and we need to kind of set up some guidelines, right? So remember, if you talk to them before you get them a phone, this is going to be the most leverage you're going to have with them. But ask them, if I get you a phone, we're going to have some guidelines and I want you to agree to them. And if you don't, then maybe we need to wait. So we also have this great contract on our website. So you guys have permission right now. If you want to scan that QR code, you may take your phones out. But if you scan that, it's going to take you right to our contract. And that is an editable version. So you can make it fit what your family wants to do. I would actually take it one step further. I think that as parents, with your kids, come up with some consequences. Like, here's the contract, but this is what we're going to do if you violate the contract. And maybe have them put some skin in the game and have them come up with, okay, what do you think? If you, change your password, how long should you not have your phone? Like, work it out with them. So, but there's some things you want to reiterate, right? You want them, don't add people you don't know, right? Don't send inappropriate photos. That seems like a no-brainer to us, but maybe they won't think about it. Sometimes it's a slow fade. It may start with, let me see you in a tank top. Okay, now let me see you in your whatever, And then just remind them a deleted photo does not go away. It could end up on a server somewhere, it could end up in the hands of other people. Don't give out your address and personal information. Disable your geotagging so that someone can't find you, and block people that are bullying you, or if there's a bully on your, if you can't handle it, come talk to me, right? So we want to remind them that having social media is a huge responsibility and it's difficult even for us adults sometimes. So, let's work on it together to set some guidelines, and remind them you're going to make mistakes and it's okay. You may lose your phone for a while, you will get it back, and then we're going to try again later. So, um, like I said, if you need to dial it back, then just say, "Hey, I am not trying to have a power trip over you. I just want you to be safe." We wouldn't let them go out and play in a dangerous neighborhood. So we want them to grow into successful adults, but they need our help. And then remember too that the phone and internet, and remind them it's very addicting, and we know that addictions can lead to other addictions. So we just want to help them with that. And I think, Julie, you're going to talk about some parental controls.
Yes, definitely. And our advisor, who works for the big tech company, the unnamed big tech company, that is his main concern, is addiction. And he said, I just tell my kids, if you're addicted to one thing, you're much more likely to become addicted to something else. And I just want you to be a successful adult, because they're learning to get that gratification instantly. They're not learning to cope in a healthy way. And it's just can lead to so many other issues. So as Janine said, our contract, you can edit it based on what you want for your family, and the kid's age too. We want to make sure we're setting clear rules and guidelines. And as Janine mentioned, we want to include consequences. What I do with my kids, whether it's this or any freedom that I'm starting to let them have, when you start to let the reins out, just let them know, you know what, you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world. There will be consequences, but this is something we're just trying to work out. This is really hard. It's hard for adults. It's really hard for kids. And one thing we all need to remember, even this is really hard to remember even as a parent, but their smartphone is not a right. It is a privilege. They are not entitled to a cell phone, to a smartphone. One thing we do want to be aware of, if our kids are and their friends are on smartphones, if you're going to take it away, that's really closely tied to all their friends. So you really want to think about it before you take it away for an extended period of time. If they're at that age where they're already kind of in it. We want to be strong and stick with the plan. If they know that there's wiggle room, they're going to take it. If both parents are not on the same page, if there's two parents involved, they're going to pick up on it and they're going to take advantage of it on this, just like they do with everything else. 100% transparency. They should know that this is what you expect from them, that you're going to know their passwords. Does anybody remember their Apple ID? Any of you? You know your Apple ID? Who do you ask? I ask my kids. I mean, most of us, they remember it because it's really important to them. So we need to write it down, put it somewhere. We're not going to forget where we put it, but the Apple ID should be something that our kids do not know. They should not have access to that. Now, some parents won't allow their kids to have any passwords. We want them to know that we expect to know their passwords and that they should not be changing them without telling us. But some parents have made the decision that I know your password. You're not going to know any of the passwords. Anything you want to do on that phone, you have to come to me. And that's age appropriate. It just depends on the age of the kids. That you should let them know that you're going to spot check it. I'm not going to read every single text between you and your BFF, but I am going to spot check it just to make sure there's nothing concerning that I need to be aware of. 100% transparency means no deleting, no erasing your browser history, no using incognito, no clicking out of the screen when I walk in. That drives me crazy. If you're doing that, you're hiding something. And if you're going to be hiding things from me, then this is not going to be a healthy thing for you to be able to do. Another thing, we highly discourage phones in the room at night. Hopefully you're not already in that place. If you are, then you may want to tell them, you know what, I'm seeing you're not getting a lot of sleep. You're not getting enough sleep. And I'm going to monitor your phone and make sure that you are getting 8 solid hours where you're not using your phone. That's a great way to kind of back out of that if you've already gotten it. But our saying at Tina Steam, nothing good happens after midnight, especially not with our kids and a cell phone. So we suggest that you have the charging station be in the parents' room and let the kids know it's going to be all ready for you to go in the morning. And one of the first things they'll say is, well, how am I going to get up? Buy them an alarm clock. You can buy them an alarm clock.
I think they have those at Walmart too.
They do. Okay, and then permission to download apps. You definitely want to make sure of that. And you should be the only one that has the password for that. And take advantage of parental controls on your phone. Things are so much better than what they were. So please take advantage of that. Check out your parental controls. If you're not sure how to do something, a quick search on a search engine, Google or whatever, will give you great instructions. There's videos on it. It's very simple. You can limit how much time they spend overall, how much time they spend during the week. You can limit how much time they spend on each app if you're concerned about a particular app. That is a great way to limit that. Now, all of these things I'm telling you, they will find ways around it. One of the things that we have found that's really helpful, if you go to monitor, see how your efficiency is on your battery, as you can see, it says what time the smartphone was being used, and it shows you how much each app was being used. Super helpful, super helpful. So if they found a way to download an app that you did not approve, it will show up here. Trick. Don't tell your kids that I told you. Janine is going to talk about screen-free zones.
Yeah, so as a family, come up with screen-free zones in your house where you want your kids to put their phones away. Is it during car rides, meal times, at restaurants? And just make sure that you are going by your same rules, right? So if you're at dinner, try not to be on your phone, right? I think you should teach your kids about the do not disturb. That's a kind of a newer thing on the Apple devices, but turn on do not disturb. Then your apps aren't coming through and distracting you. You can do it while you're at school. There's reading focus. There's the sleep thing is great too. My thing at 10:45 plays the little go to sleep song, and then all my notifications are off. And until that turns back on, like it will not say I missed 10 texts until 7:30 a.m. when it comes back on. So there won't be that distraction. And they can turn off app notifications altogether. I think that actually was in the Social Media or the Social Dilemma movie. Some of the executives were saying like they turn them off because you get so distracted when you see, oh my gosh, there's 25 Facebook notifications that I missed. So, kind of show them there's different ways to help them not be so distracted.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. And we highly encourage monitoring apps. These are a couple of them that our staff, that our staff have used. Has anybody used a monitoring app that they really like? You have what? Do you mind if I ask? Custodio. I've heard of that. So that works well. Is it pretty user friendly? Oh, good to hear. Good to hear. Okay. Anybody else? We've heard great things about both of these, and I have heard about Custodio. Yeah. Yeah. So another thing that you can do to monitor is be on your kid's social media account. I would discourage you from commenting because you don't want to embarrass them. And plus you'll just send them off. If I remember, I'm thinking I'm such a good parent. I'm on my kid's Instagram account. And then I realized they're not using it very much. Does anybody know what a Finsta is? Finsta is your Instagram account that only your friends see. So if you have their password and you're monitoring, then you'll be able to see that. You'll be aware of it. Can they still work around all of this? Whether we have Are you finding that your kids are finding ways around it? Yes, they do. They can get Spotify. Yeah, yeah, yeah. How did you find out? Oh, okay, okay, okay. So yeah, they can find ways around this. So that's why we want to monitor it. We want to do the best that we can. We want to keep open communication. But again, if they are deceiving us, they need to know we expect 100% transparency. If you're deceiving me, then you're going to lose privileges. Then you're not adult enough to use something so powerful. One of the things that we do in our house, we would, if you can come to me with a reasonable discussion and with reasonable talking points, I will consider your request. If you come at me yelling and screaming and fighting and being unreasonable, then I am not even going to consider your request. So they have to be adult enough to talk about it. And if you're adult enough to talk about it, if they're going to be like that, then you can have a conversation with them and say, you know what, you're hiding this from me. What would you do if you were a parent? And more on that later, actually. Go ahead, Janine.
I actually got in trouble commenting on my 26-year-old son's Facebook account. So I was trying to.
Facebook account.
Well, he has a business, so
Okay,
he
okay.
had taken a picture of something, and he said, "Mom, I don't want people to know that I'm a very young business owner. I don't want people to know that my mom thinks that my stuff is great." I'm like, okay then. But then I didn't want to delete it because the owner that he does cabinetry, but she had commented. So I'm like, okay, we're just gonna leave that alone. But yeah, so teaching moments, right? So we want to teach our kids self-control, and this is important because we can't assume that they're going to figure this out on their own, right? So are they adhering to the limits we set? And maybe I don't want to say bribe them because that's not a good word, but there is a cookie jar there. But if they want to earn cell phone time, then maybe they can read for an hour or go outside and play for an hour or do something else. So, and you can also encourage them to take a social media break. There's a lot of people doing it, and I know I've done it before, and it was actually kind of freeing. So,
Yeah, we're hearing a lot of kids doing that. So that tells you how much pressure is on them with
right.
social media.
Right. So, and just always remember to emphasize why you're doing this. It's because you care about them, you care about their mental health, and you want them to become successful adults. So, do you have any ideas? Does anyone have any ideas of how they've helped their kids monitor and have self control on their phone?
Teaching self-control. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I went to a movie recently and my child had the phone out and I was like, I remember the Cinemark app used to have a thing where you got like rewards if you put your phone on some type of silent mode, but it's like unfortunately these buzzes, like you said, like you cannot even be gone for 2 hours in a movie without going on there. So they really, really need our help, right? So another thing we want, did anyone else have ideas? Sorry, I didn't. Okay.
Oh,
Right.
that's great. Yeah, I did that with my son. Actually, I found out really quickly I had to require that he had his homework done before he could have his phone. But then he was rushing through his homework and it was a mess. It was a crumpled up, scribbled mess that you could never even read. So I actually had to, I said, you know what? I've tried to work with you. This was over some time. And I said, you're not going to have any technology, no screens during the week, only on the weekends. And then what do you think he did? Friday at 3 o'clock until Sunday night, he would try to be on it just continually without sleeping or anything. So there was just no. You really have to work at it.
Yeah.
You really have to work at it.
You do.
It's hard.
And also, if they have an Apple, there's some crossover, right? So if you're on an Apple computer doing your homework, your texts are coming through on your computer. So, kind of
Yeah.
double having to kind of watch that. But also, we want to model healthy usage, right? So adhere to your own rules. be aware of how much time as a parent you're spending on your phone, right? So are we showing our kids that we can't put our phones down? And I know for me, because of being in real estate, I don't have normal business hours, right? So there are times when I may get a call during dinner. So I try to be very cognizant that, okay, if my escrow isn't falling apart, I'm not going to take the call. But if I really need to take it, I'm going to explain to my kids, hey, I need to step away. Like, because they don't, you may be taking a work call. It could be your boss and you really need to take that call. But let them know you're important to me, but I need to answer this call. So, yeah, so we want to, here's a therapist was working with younger kids, and these are some of the things that their kids were saying, right? So these kids are seeing that their parents are so busy on their phone, they felt like they weren't important. So that's really heartbreaking to see that. And I've seen that. I've, been out places and I've seen, a mom in the park buried in a phone and the kids, falling off the swing crying. And it's like, hello, we're all guilty of it, but don't let your kids think that your phone is more important than them. So that's super important. And then just find ways to connect with your kids and enter their world, right? So ask them what they're into. Like Julie said, who's your favorite YouTuber? What reels are you watching? Watch some with them, laugh with them. Play video games with them. Learn how to play Fortnite, whatnot. Be aware of their demeanor also, because sometimes they may be on their phone and you notice that all of a sudden their attitude just gets real sour. Go talk to them. What happened? Is there anything you want to talk about? Because they could be getting bullied. And the more you get these healthy conversations, the more they're going to trust you and they're going to want to come to you. So we want to make a relationship with our kids so that they will seek our guidance, right? So just enter their world, be with them, and just continue to let them know I am just trying to help you be a successful adult.
Yeah, one of the things that I love to do with my son, because as they get older, it can be a little bit more challenging. When they're little, you're down on the floor playing trucks or My Little Pony or whatever. But as they get older, that can be a little bit more challenging. So my son and I watch his favorite YouTube comedian. And he's 23 years old. We'll curl up on the couch. I hope he's not going to hear this. We'll curl up on the couch and watch his favorite comedian. And it's really fun. And also when they were younger, when they were spending that screen time like that with me, then I didn't count it against their time, against their time limit. But did you have anything else to add to that? Okay. So again, we don't want to discourage parents. We don't want to frighten you. We just want you to know we know how hard it is. We know how difficult it's going to be in trying to help your kids navigate this world. And so for that, the reason we want you to know is all the negative aspects is because it's going to be really hard. But I do want to encourage you. It's just like eating healthy or doing their chores. They're not going to like it. If we let them, they would stay up all night eating Lucky Charms. So they definitely need it. And keep in mind that things are better and they're getting better and better. The apps are getting better. We're holding social or big tech accountable. I encourage you to contact your state representative if you see anything that's bothering you, because they are, it's starting to happen. Big tech is paying attention. It seems like they're never going to listen. It seems like they're never going to be on the same page as you, but trust me, they definitely will. I remember my son telling me, I will never put screen limits on for my kids. I will never do that. You are the worst parent ever. I'm going to be so much better parent than you. And it didn't even bother me because I'm like, oh my gosh. So just last week, I asked my son, if you were a parent, what would you do to help your kids navigate through social media? And he said, first thing he said, no TikTok. Anybody's kids on TikTok? TikTok, a couple of things about TikTok. First of all, the algorithms are so effective. It can get, if they start down a dark road, it can get super dark really fast, whether it's self-harm or anything like that. In addition to that, my son said, I can't set it down. I had to delete it. If I'm on Instagram, I can set it down when I need to. And it does the same thing. But with TikTok, it's so addicting, I can't set it down. He also said, and this is so interesting because he doesn't know that this is what we advocate. We advocate no social media until 8th or 9th grade. He said, I would never let my kids have social media until they're in high school. And he also said that he would get them a flip phone so that he could go pick them up. So kids are starting to realize when they first got the phones, they weren't real. When they, our brand new digital natives, they didn't know, but they're starting to see. And then he said, I remember when we got phones because before that we used to play outside. That was super sad. I asked my 19-year-old daughter the same question. Really interesting. First thing she said, and they don't even live together, so they weren't talking about this. First thing she said, no TikTok. Second thing she said, no social media until high school. I asked her why, and she said because they're not mature enough to handle it and because of all the brainwashing. And then I thought she was done. Then she said, oh, wait a minute. Also, they need permission to download apps, which is hilarious because they found a way around it. And I found out from that battery trick I told you. But I required permission for downloading apps. So my friend who was super, super strict with her 18-year-old, there were so many fights over his smartphone and the restrictions that she put on it. And she said, don't worry, when you're 18, I'll take all the restrictions off. So she did it kind of gradually. He was 18. She took off all restrictions. Within 3 days, he came back to her and asked her to put the limits back on. Yeah, I don't know what happened, but he asked for the limits and the explicit content to be blocked. So I don't know. I don't know what happened, but definitely they do, they do come around. They do come around. It just, and you're probably tired of hearing that when you have an elementary schooler or a middle schooler, but it does happen. And you might not think so. It might not seem like it. They might not act like it. But as parents, trust me, we are the most influential voice in their life. We talk to 20,000 students in the East Bay every year. And their parents have a lot more influence than what they realize. So I want to encourage you with that. Some action steps that you can take: enter their world for 30 minutes this week, set up some guidelines together. One of the things we advocate for, take your kid on a date. We call it a non-agenda time. So don't talk about grades, don't talk about anything, just to spend time with them, and have it be with no phones if it won't ruin the whole thing. If it's going to ruin the whole thing, then it's kind of pointless. But and as I said, contact your state representative, anything that's bothering you, because they do listen. My son actually now works for the state legislature, and they have people that listen. They pay attention to every phone call that comes in. I have some resources for you, and if anybody wants these slides, please go ahead and feel free to email me. We have a lot of information on our website. We have videos on technology. We have videos on cyberbullying. There's a couple of books that are great if you want to learn more about what technology does with our teen's brain. If you want to know if an app is appropriate for your child, Common Sense Media is amazing. Very detailed, very thorough. Also, Google or any other search engine. If you want to know how to find out if your kid is getting around one of your safeguards, that's an awesome go-to. And as Janine and I said, just last week, we rewatched The Social Dilemma. I encourage you, when it first came out, my daughter was in middle school, and she came home and said, I want to watch this with you. And we watched it twice. She wanted to see it twice. Kids do not like being duped. They don't like being manipulated. When they see this, they're going to see what's happening, and it's very eye-opening. So I highly encourage that. Janine, do you have anything else?
Have any of you seen that movie or heard of it? Yeah, it's a documentary in it, and the people that are in it they're Pinterest, Google, Facebook, they're all executives, and they, basically it's almost like the Hunger Games, like behind the scene, the Wizard of Oz, what they're doing. So it's very, very eye-opening, and I would say watch it with your child because they're going to get it. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything that you want to share with other parents that's working for you? We do, yeah. Right. Yeah, we can definitely send some information. We have speakers for both. Usually, it's typically in 7th grade and 9th grade. People who are way younger and cooler than me. So.
That's why our
They don't-
kids do it and
yeah.
not us.
We only get to talk to parents. Okay. Yeah, and it's overwhelming as a parent. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great advice. That's great
And
advice.
things change. I mean, before TikTok, it was Vine. And I remember my daughter would talk about, oh, Justin, blah, blah, blah. And I thought Justin was a kid from school. He was some Vine famous person. Like, they get so into these people that have become famous online that it's like they talk about them like they're personal friends with them.
Yeah.
It's really crazy. So if you don't know what apps your kids are on, I would definitely at least try to get that conversation going. Like, what apps are you on so that you're kind of aware of, and figure out what are the, concerns about each one. So
Yeah, on that, one of the things that we talk to kids about, think about your favorite influencer. Now, what if you listen to them and they say smoking weed is awesome, and you take their advice and you end up getting in trouble and getting caught and getting suspended? Are you going to call Jason or whoever it is and say, hey, I listened to your advice. I started smoking weed and I got kicked out of school. Do you think he's going to care? Do you think he's going to be there for you? Who's the one that's going to be there for you? Your parents, your teachers, your administrators, your counselors. Those are the people that really care about you. So we have to remind them of that because they get so wrapped up in it. So that's a great point.
did you have a comment?
Yeah, the one thing I was curious if you have heard, all the tips are fabulous for elementary parents. And parents like, I'm a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. Yeah. And their iPads go out, they get 45 minutes a night. That's it. They've never been plugged in the bedroom. So it's easy, you can start there. But so what I hear so often is, it's too late. I got 7th graders, I got 8th graders, I can't get it back. So do you have any tips or recommendations for once you've already done that, how can we get it back? And if so, how do you, like, it's just a matter of, you gotta hold the line and say, no, I'm a parent, I'm not a friend. I mean, that's honestly what I get a lot of, like, they're already down that rabbit hole, I struggle to get it back.
That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. And it's going to be different for every parent and every kid. But that's why we went through so many of the negative things. So you realize how important it is and how important it is for you to stick to your guns and to adhere to whatever your guidelines are. Time restriction is the most important thing that we're seeing for kids that age. They're just, remember in COVID, we had all our guidelines and everything, and then all of a sudden COVID, it's like, okay, you can spend 15 hours a day, but that's it.
Yeah.
All the rules seem to go out the window for everybody. And it can feel like that, especially with your 7th and 8th graders and your high school students. So really, there's no magic bullet. There's no magic answer. You have to just stick to it. And I really like the suggestion that we had from the one parent regarding the sleeping. I'm seeing you're not getting enough sleep. So I'm going to monitor it. If you can't do it, it's just because I care about you. And make sure they know that it's because you care about them. It's not because you want to have power over them. But I see you're not getting enough sleep. I'm going to monitor it. And if you're on your phone at night, then we're going to have to take it in our room. If they're not on it, then at night, then it's not an issue. So.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I think to answer your question, it is a little bit of an awkward conversation, but that's why we're saying, like, if you need to just go to them and say, hey, I just went to this great talk and, I think that we need to set up some guidelines. And in the end, it's really hard. I'm a people pleaser, right? So I want my kids to like me, but in the end, I'm the parent, you're the child. I'm paying the bill. You know, I've said to my kids before, like, when you want to take over this, you know, $50 a month for your phone, then you can do whatever you want, but under my roof, you know, just see if, I mean, I wouldn't chop it and take it all away, you know, like maybe gradually just kind of sit down with them and come up with some guidelines that can at least.
Exactly.
Right.
It's,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
it is a privilege, not a right. Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you. So Julie and Janine, thank you so much. Teen Esteem, thank you for partnering with us. I also want to thank the parents that were present here tonight and gave us some feedback. And parents that are online, thank you too for partnering. I also would like to thank Mark Nelson, principal of Benicia Middle School, for being here. It takes a village to support our kiddos, and also Dr. Damon Wright, superintendent. Thank you. Everybody have a nice evening.
Thank you.